Alright, this is chapter 8. It's about risk. Yay! Aren't you excited? Alright, let's talk about risk for a minute. Risk says to reduce risk, an organization must know itself and know its enemy. There's a lot of quotes based on that, but knowing it.
Whatever, right?
Yeah, that's it. The Art of War guy. Yeah. So the big issue there is must know yourself. So many people think they know themselves when they really don't know themselves. But yeah, that's a big issue. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a bunch of different enemies out there. It says locate the weaknesses of your operations. You think all organizations have weaknesses? Yeah, everybody does. It was funny because the infamous Lab 7 in forensics, even after we fixed it so many times, I found a major flaw in the script that Roy wrote. It was actually leaving off. And the weird thing was, he wrote part of the script twice, and one time he did it right, one time he did it wrong. Oh, it's killing me. So the point is there's always a weakness. Hello World, for instance, those of you know what Hello World is like. Do you think you could write that without error? No, it's impossible to write something without it because you don't know positively that it'll work every time on every hardware and everything. You don't. You just won't know. Okay, so weaknesses are very tough. Okay, it says understand how the organization's information is processed, stored, and transmitted. And a lot of times you won't know all of that. But okay, y'all enroll in classes today. Some of you. Do you know how that's managed, where that's stored, and how that all works? No, it just happens. So you would probably not be a good person to work on minimizing risk in that area. But hopefully someone does know over there. Okay? Identify what resources are available. And a funny story about that, when I was working on my first master's degree, we had a guy come in to speak. He worked at GM, back when we had a GM plant. And he was interviewing all these people in this area. Basically, he was brought in to look for ways to save, pretty much. So he was in there, and he interviewed people, and he was basically saying, okay, how many computers do you have in this whole area? In other words, from your perspective, how many computers do you have? And then how many printers do you have? Then, I don't remember the numbers, but just say an example of 100 computers and probably about 10 printers. That's about what it's about a tenth the amount of printers as computers is what he came up with. Well, when he actually counted, they had like 96 printers compared to with 100 people. There was basically a printer for every person. So really, people don't know. And even here at Rose State, when we calculate the number of computers on the network, well, my network is not on the Rose network, so they don't get counted. Okay, so it's kind of. I was actually in a meeting a few years ago, like, yes, we have 2,000 some odd computers. And I said, what about mine? Oh, well, this number does not include Ken's network, and there's another couple hundred there, so, it's really tough keeping track of resources, okay? Know yourself. It says, managers should understand how information is processed, stored. We got a dean, Mark Tippin. Some of you might know the dean, okay? Brand new. He's basically almost here, been here a year. Do you think you really know how everything works? No. I remember the first month he did payroll, he came, all right, Ken, what are we paying you for? Because he didn't know at that point, okay? Okay, it says requires knowing which information assets are valuable to our organization. We got an office, actually a storage room right behind this wall with a bunch of old court reporting machines. You know those little funky typewriters you always see in court movies? We have those. What do you think? Think they're valuable? Anybody?
Someone somewhere they are.
To someone somewhere, but to us in our organization currently, probably not. We don't have court reporting anymore. So it really depends on where you're at. When I was in charge, it was called the ADPE custodian, which was the automated data processing equipment. I was in charge of tracking all that stuff, and we were losing typewriters like crazy. Those old IBM Selectrics. Well, they wanted to bill us for them, and I said, "There's no value to them. So why?" They might have had value at one point, but they no longer do. Okay. So must also know how they are currently being protected. Do we have virus scanners running? Actually, do we on this computer? Let's find out. I should have one down here. I do. I have one right here. I should be able to open it. I should be able to go under history and see if we detect anything. We have not detected anything on this machine, which is good. I should be able to see when the last scan ran. This is the daily scan. Last scan was today at 12:22 a.m. So I would assume it's working and just didn't find anything. Okay. At the end of the day, that might not be true anymore. Okay. So this is frequently risk management mechanisms are implemented but not maintained or kept current. Virus scanners. Has anyone ever bought a machine that came with a virus scanner? They mostly all come with them nowadays.
Yes.
How long do they last?
About a month, 30 days, 2 months.
Yeah, sometimes a month, maybe 2. I've even seen them last up to 90 days. And what happens after that point? You got to pay for it.
Yep.
A lot of people don't pay for it. So at that point, what happens? Does it still work? It works, but it doesn't get updated. It's like, the viruses that were, from this day back, but not the current stuff. So they're not kept current. Okay? Like it says there, the last thing, it is a process. So knowing your enemy means identifying, examining, understanding the threats against you, against your information assets. Okay? So what's the number one threat to an organization usually? Anybody know?
Internal.
Yeah, usually internal, the people. I mean, you students, you all have logins, so you're in our network now. So that's really a threat. Okay? So knowing how all that fits together is a big issue. Risk management is discovering and assessing the risk to your operations. Okay? Analysis, the identification of assets and the level of risk to the organization. We'll talk a bunch about that. And I'm going to see these 2 slides here. See if you know the same thing I did. Okay, this is the accountability of risk management part 1. Okay, it says all communities of interest are responsible for the management of risk. So everybody should be a part of it. Every person. So does that mean our cleaning crew should be involved? Well, considering they have access to every room, you would hope they're involved in one aspect or another. Okay. Each has a strategic role to play. Okay, information security members must understand the threats and attacks. Now, does this also mean that our secretary, Mary, who has very little computer knowledge, needs to know everything? No. But you should know that, hey, if you don't log off your computer at the end of the day, that kind of stuff. She should know the basics. Okay? So the IT, it says this group must help build the secure systems and ensure their safe operation. Make sure they're updated, which is always the case. Here we go. Management and users. This group plays a role when properly trained and kept aware of threats. Our IT services is always sending out emails about malicious emails that we receive. Hey, don't click on this. Now here's part 1. You ready for part 2? This is part 2, doesn't it?
No.
Let's see. There's part 1. You ready for part 2?
It's italicized.
The italicized.
Yeah, the italicized. I was like, what?
Number 1. Which one is more? Or which one is better? Number 1 or number 2?
Because I was going through them, I'm like, what is the deal? I don't know. Okay, so I don't know. Okay, so let's go to part 3. Okay, it says community of interest must be actively involved in the following activities: evaluating risk. We talked about that a little bit already. Determine which controls are cost effective. Yeah, we could spend tons of money, but now with budget cuts, we actually just got an email today about another huge budget cut. We're actually going to be losing people now. So, massive amounts of stuff there. How about inquiring and installing the appropriate controls? Do you have something? Do you all have virus scanners running at home?
Yep.
Good, you're going to need one. Okay. Okay, overseeing process to ensure the controls remain effective. Do you ever test them? Well, you're going to test them this week. Okay, I'll show you how. Okay, identifying risks, assessing risks, and summarizing your findings. That's always a biggie. Look at what the results were. Okay, and they go into each of these in depth. Identification begins with the process of self-examining. I had to do a project in this at University of Tulsa where I had to do a personal risk identification. Or basically, it's an entire risk management plan. But I had to look at the risks to me. I was going to have you guys do something like this, but then I changed my mind. What would be risks as they pertain to you guys as students? What do you think?
Us getting infected with the virus, and then that virus using our information that we probably have stored on our computer.
Okay, that could be. So get infected with the virus and using your information. I'm assuming none of you live here.
No.
So assume you all drove here.
Yes.
Okay. So that could be a risk, especially depending who else is on the road. How about tuition? Is tuition a risk? He says no. He says yes.
I
Well,
say
I mean,
yes.
you're paying for these classes, so you're getting your money worth. Well, the government's paying for it, so technically we're all paying for it. You know, it's like, yeah, I felt the same way in the moment, but really you are paying for it. Just, yeah. Okay, so I mean, there are a lot of risks as they pertain to it. I mean, eating breakfast. How about these people get E. coli and get all these different stuff? I got sick for 3 weeks in that, and it seems like everybody else got sick around here. So what's the chances? You know, I guess I wasn't the one spreading it because most of you were still here, which was good. Okay, so I mean, there's a lots of things. How about the Oklahoma weather? We had like 30 degrees and 80 degrees and then 30 degrees, and it's snowing in Woodward yesterday, and so weather could be an issue. So it says identify the information assets. So what do we have? So we should be going through here and identifying the computer and the Elmo and the speakers and the phone, all that stuff. Keep track of everything. Okay. It says classify and categorize them, prioritize them. So in this room, what do you think the most important item would be? Probably the computer right here. So do I really necessarily need the Elmo? Well, I could get away without it. It makes our job easier in some classes, but we could probably live without it. It says must be done to identify weaknesses and threats they present. Okay. Some things. How about people, procedures, data? So are people an asset? Yeah. If they don't pay me, you think I'll still be here? Actually, probably would. But okay. How about procedures? Think about the procedure for making. There's a McCormick makes spices. You know what spices are. They made this spice I found a few years ago called Fiery 5 Peppers. Best seasoning known to man. They stopped selling it 2 years ago. Now, so I actually emailed them. I said, hey, I know what the ingredients are because I could read it on the bottle, but I don't know the process for making it. So you think the process is kind of important? Like the amounts of each one. So I actually emailed them. I said, can you please give me the recipe for it? Since you don't sell it anymore, can you please share it? They won't. But they did tell me they sell it now in large volumes, like through Sam's. But imagine that. No Sam's carry it. So it sucks. But, I mean, the procedures is an important thing as well. Like, how do you make something? The data. Obviously, grades are important to you guys. Wouldn't it suck if we lost all your grades?
Yep.
So, actually, 2 semesters ago, we finally stopped having to print out grade rosters. At the end of the semester, we always had to print them out and turn into copies, and now we don't have to do that anymore, finally. Software. I mean, we pay big bucks for software. I don't know what we pay for Microsoft because we have a site license for the whole school on that. But FTK, I pay $3,000 a year. NCASE, a little bit less than that. Parabin, about $3,000. Adobe, we're probably spending about $35,000 a year just to have the Adobe Creative Suite. So you think software is important? Yeah, very important. Okay. Hardware, we talked about computer a little bit. Yeah, obviously those are important. How about networking components? You ever buy a switch? A really nice manageable switch? Those things are way up there. Okay. All right, so keep track of all this stuff. Okay. People could be a trusted employee, other staff members. So like right now, literally, the president sent the email out today about we might have to lose some positions. So you don't think they're going through that list right now, seeing which positions we really need, which positions we could do without. Hopefully I'm on the top of the list, the trusted employee that's really needed. But, that's always important to know. Okay? Procedures, how we do stuff is important. Our curriculum, that's obviously have some value to it. Okay? Talked about data already. All right. Says, asset inventory system. Keep track of everything. Of hardware, networking. Does anyone ever keep track of all the stuff at your house? I had a house fire years ago. And the insurance company was willing to pay for everything. But I had to give them an inventory list. That sucks. Because do you really know what you had? You don't. You don't really know what you... Even if you think you know what you have, you don't. Well, what we did is we just went down and thought all the stuff we could remember that we had. And since there was a fire, we literally just took a picture of this pile of ashes and said, oh, here was this, here was this, here was this. But an inventory list is a good thing. Now, I have some expensive art at home. I do have a copy of that. I have an inventory of that. So I can keep track of that. Okay? It says organizations that do not use an automated inventory system must do it manually. Automated systems are very nice, but again, not all of our network is on that. Okay. The inventory process requires a lot of planning. When I worked at Tinker in the networking shop, I still remember these people from Keystore came out, did an actual mapping and inventory of our entire network at Tinker Air Force Base. And I was in building 284 in one of the hallways, and this guy was in there mapping the lines. And we're like, wait 30 minutes because we're running a new line right now. And he goes, nope, snapshot in time. This is as of right now, this is what we got. I'm like, 30 minutes is going to be outdated. That's the way it is for everything. Because, he might have waited for that, but the next day we're going to run another line. And then, so keeping it up to date is a very big issue. Okay. It says, must determine which attributes of each information should be tracked. And they show us an example of that. I think it's important to keep track of all this on a computer. For a while there, Dell, when you bought it, they would actually give you a sticker that the service tag, the serial number, the MAC address, everything was on it. Obviously not the IP address. But I thought that was an awesome feature. They don't do it anymore. But this is kind of nice. Can some of this change? Yeah, I'd say a lot of it. Probably the location could change. Some of the components internal to it could change. But it wouldn't hurt to have at least something to start with and keep it updated. Okay. Now for people, how about the position? It's funny that I went home Thursday afternoon. I got a phone call from our secretary, wanted to know what my position was. Well, I'm the director and also a professor. I'm 60-40. I'm 60 professor, 40% director. But they couldn't find any record of that. They're like, we've checked everywhere. No one has any record of your position. I'm like, I don't know. It was created somehow because they pay me. So somewhere it was done. They just don't randomly start throwing money out at people. But they literally could not find it. And that could be why we got the email today. They're trying to go through everybody on campus what their actual positions are.
Do you get paid in cash or check?
It's in a check. Taxable even. So the point is, position name might be a big deal. Who your supervisor is, security clearance, especially if you work like at Tinker. That would be a really good thing to know who has what. And special skills. When I was at Tinker, I had there's a SEI, Special Equipment Identifier. If you work on certain pieces of equipment, they basically list it as a special skill. So I had an SEI for AWACS. So I worked on AWACS. I was an AWACS jet engine mechanic. So I was actually given orders to go to Florida. I did not want to go. But they said, you have the SEI. You need to go. So I actually went down there even to look for a house and was speaking to the people that I'll be working with. I'll be working with a group of civilians. I would be the military representative for the civilians on the AWACS radar. So I'm like, I'm a jet engine mechanic. I've never touched the radar. But you hold the SEI. I said, yeah, but the SEI in the military really just means AWACS. It doesn't mean AWACS engines or AWACS radar. So that sucked. I didn't end up going, if you didn't notice. But point was that it was tough. It would help to keep track of all that information. All right, procedures. What do you do? How do you do stuff is another good thing. Like coming to class late, like Heather. So, where are your procedures documented? Where are they stored? How are they updated? Okay. You guys wrote, at least some of you did, you wrote the whole password policy. One thing I think quite a few people on was, when's it updated? That kind of stuff. So, all procedures need to have that aspect to it. Okay. Data itself. What is your data? When I worked at Tinker at the software development area, we actually wrote software. So we actually, when we were done with a certain release of it, we gave it to them electronically, plus we actually had to print it out, 2 copies of it, and 2 tapes, and had to be stored in different locations. So all this stuff is kept, where was it at, all that stuff. Okay. How about backup procedures? You all have backup procedures at your house? Do you have one at your office now, Heather? Backup procedure.
I have no idea. I'm not responsible for it. But you know what? That's what she gets for opening things.
That's
and
right.
Not having a backup.
So backup procedures, whatever the cost is, you need one. When I was at Tulsa, I had to write a Java, it was a Pascal compiler in Java. So using Java, I had to write code to compile Pascal. And that was all I had to do to graduate. So you think I had a backup of that? I had an hourly backup. It's like as soon as I made progress, I would literally FTP it into another location with a different name on it, version 1, version 2, version 50. I put date, because that, it's one of those deals, if you screw something up, you want to be able to roll back. So backup is a big deal for your data as well. If we were to all of a sudden lose all of our grades here at Rose State, that would kind of suck. Some people would probably be kind of happy, but some of you would probably think it sucks. Okay, it says determine whether asset categories are meaningful. Internet components is too general, but maybe for some people, internet components just fine. If we're talking a home network, internet components would probably mean a router. But at Rose State would mean a lot of different things. Okay. Classification schemes: confidential, internal, public. So I don't know how we classify our information here. I'm assuming it's all freedom of information type stuff. So you have to have a reason to get it, but you could get it if needed. It's not like it's secret or anything like that. Okay. It says they must be comprehensive and mutually exclusive. All right. So it says, as each asset is identified, categorized and identified, it says a relative value. Everything must have a value. So does this mouse here have a value? It should have a value. But you think I'm actually going to keep track of this pencil right here?
No.
Probably not, because it would cost me more to make a tracking system for this pencil than it would actually be to just buy a new pencil. Probably the same with the mouse. This computer should have an asset tag on it somewhere from Rose State. It's probably on the bottom. Oh, it's right here. It's right here. I got it. It's right here. This monitor does not have one. Anyone know why?
Isn't it harder to repair an LCD screen? So it's like,
well,
costs. It'd be easier to buy a new.
It's really easier to buy a new one. Rose State has set a limit. Anything below $500, no tracking required. So you could take this monitor, stick it in your backpack, and walk off with it. But now I know y'all get it. But the point is they don't track everything cheap. Because, again, this mouse, it's not much. So what would it cost to track this mouse compared to just buy a new mouse? Okay, probably not
At least
much.
double or triple. Yeah, triple price.
But I think, I think 500 might be a little bit off, because like we get an iPad for $4.99. Oh, don't need to track it. Well, what do you think the theft potential of an iPad is? Yeah, very high. So I think that $500 limit should also have a thought component to it. Hey, this is a high theft item. So what if it's only $4.99 or $2.99? It's a high theft item. We shouldn't just give them away. So, but yeah, value is an important deal as well. Okay, the following questions is which information asset is the most critical? So if keeping track of this room, obviously we would probably put the computer on the top of the list. Which information asset generates the most revenue? I'd probably say the computer again, in this room again. Okay, which asset generates the highest profitability? Same thing. Which asset is most expensive? I would probably say that Elmo is probably more expensive. These computers are probably about $500 or $700. So the one that's the most important is not always the most expensive. Okay. All right. Which asset is the most expensive to protect? I would say it's a lot harder to protect the computer than it is to protect an Elmo. I haven't heard any exploits on Elmos yet. Have y'all? Someday. I'm waiting for an exploit on a mouse or something. Which assets loss or compromise would be the most embarrassing or cause the greatest liability? I don't know of any in this room that would cause that. But what if we're talking campus-wide? Someone hacked into one of our signs and changed it to say something else. That might be something. We have that sign out in front of the HES building. So what if someone broke into that? Is that being protected? I would hope it would be, because that would be very embarrassing. How about, what was it, last year? Remember when there was a shooting on campus? Did y'all hear about that?
Was it a shooting or was it just the shooter running?
It was the shooter running across.
And actually,
He got shot here.
Yeah, he got shot and killed here.
But the point is, he really committed the crime somewhere else. But it was very embarrassing to the school when they went to notify people that, oh, your license is expired. We can no longer notify you. Did we all hear about 2 weeks ago when you had the bomb threat in this building?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a backpack found in the bathroom.
With the note attached.
Yes, it's free to a good home. So somebody picked it up, carried it into the main office, and like, oh no! So they literally called the cops to evacuate the building. My point was, I still never got notified. Did you, Heather? We got verbally notified.
I got notified after the fact via text.
Oh, so I didn't get I got a text on the same day we're testing the system.
Yeah, that's what I got, was we're testing the system.
That had nothing to do with it.
No, it's just saying, hey, we're testing the system.
So that's why I was wondering, like, maybe they should have notified, even though it was resolved within an hour. Wouldn't it have been nice to say, hey, there's a possible bomb threat?
Yeah, because if you think about it, OU has had it, and one of the colleges, I think Edmond has had one, where they evacuated all the buildings surrounding the suspected bomb, and they just evacuated this one. Who cares about people in science at bats? It's actually a bomb.
Yeah, that's true. The bomb went off. It's depending on the size, but it could really affect another building. So, but all right.
Especially the location, because it was left down here in the women's restroom. That would have taken out science and math.
I just thought that was funny. Like, I never got notified. Okay, so you can use the spreadsheet. There's kind of an example here. Keep track of what the item is. Maybe its classification and impact to profitability. So maybe customers be able to order via SSL is pretty critical, because if we can't get orders in, we're not going to make any money. Maybe the router. Well, we need the router to be able to get the orders, so all that's critical. But this supplier fulfillment advice, we could probably, that's important, but not that important. Here's the one I love. Customer service request via email. Anyone use LastPass in here? Okay.
Oh, no.
I love LastPass. Okay. But it was bought out by LogMeIn bought them out. I don't like LogMeIn, so I'm kind of stuck.
Hamachi is one of their.
Yeah, that is Hamachi there as well. I emailed them with a problem. They have this new app called the LastPass Authenticator, which I installed. But I couldn't get it to work with Dropbox. So since I'm a premium member, since I pay the whole $12 a year, I could email them for help. So I got a response back, we'll notify you within 2 business days. Well, they got back with me like, oh, okay, here's how you fix it. Follow this link and do all this stuff. Basically involved totally removing it, reinstalling it, and I had issues with it from that point on. We kept going back and forth. I finally emailed them and said, do not send me that link again. I've removed it and reinstalled how many times? That's not the issue. Then I finally get an email that says, oh, seems we misread your initial email. We don't work with Dropbox. Why didn't you tell me that at the beginning? So really that whole customer service request, I'm not happy with them right now. Okay. It's not just them, it's with everybody. Okay. All right, listing assets by order of importance. What is the most important item? So I think our logistics bill of lading is pretty important here. Actually, the customer order is actually a 1, so that's even higher. So keep track of which one is the most important. Okay. Now, threat identification says, do not assume every threat can and will attack every information asset, but they could. Okay. So what are those out there? Okay. So each step in the threat identification, vulnerability identification, should be managed separately. They should all be done separately, which we're going to see. Okay, a threat assessment. What are all the threats? So what are the threats to this room? Okay, a virus. We could theoretically click on something. Could lose power. Could lose heat. Could have an electrical failure. Have a circuit breaker right there. Could have fire, tornado, something like that. So you have to look at everything. What? Or could have Heather actually come to class on time. That would be a big threat.
I got distracted working on John thing, trying to get all this.
Alright, so which threats present a danger to organization information assets? Okay, that's probably a biggie. Which threat presents the gravest danger to the information asset? In other words, which one's the highest? Okay. Here are some examples. Compromise to intellectual property, or maybe forces of nature. So fire, flood, earthquake, hence we now have sprinklers in our building. Now, I don't know if you know, we did not have those until just recently. We actually can prevent against fire now. Okay. How about human error or failure? Could people do that?
Sure.
Yeah, it's called forensics labs. There's one every week. Every week there's one.
It happens. Okay.
Software attacks, maybe we got some viruses, maybe we got some malware, maybe we got some ransomware out there. Okay? Could also have equipment failures, could have all kinds of stuff. Okay? A lot of stuff could happen. Frequency. Okay? I was actually watching a video yesterday. I was bored. I just clicked on YouTube. You ever just go to YouTube without searching and it just shows you a bunch of random stuff?
Yeah.
But they had this train used to clear snow in California. It can basically make a 12-foot swath through anything. It's really super powerful. But the last time they used it was like in '96. Because they only use it when there's like over 90-something feet of snow. So really, how often does it happen? You know, okay, so should they buy that train, considering they only use it once every 20 years? Well, that once every 20 years, they really need it.
Yeah.
So that's what they're saying. They need it because, you know, it does happen. It just doesn't happen that frequently. And I live on Choctaw Road, where they're doing all the construction. And when we were briefed about the construction by the engineers, they were planning, they're redoing the roads to manage a 100-year flood. What that means is in the span of 100 years, what is the largest flood they would ever expect? So that's what they built the road. They redesigned the road upon. Someone asked the question, what about the 200-year flood? And they're like, you know. It's okay. We also had a guy really complaining because when they do the Choctaw and I-40 intersection there, he really stressed that he needs a horse walk underneath the bridge. He's like, yes, I like to walk my horses. They're like, we're not installing a horse walk on this. First of all, I'd have to make it a lot wider. How many horses do you think actually walk up and down that road? Yeah, his. That's it.
His two.
But it was, you know, it's pretty funny, you know, when they came in, he was throwing fits on that. But the whole 100-year flood makes sense. You know, how much rain do you expect? And it just turns out this last year we did have a huge flood like that. So, and the road actually worked, which was good. So, sorry, the number of organizations reporting malware has increased. Obviously, that's going crazy. But how about this one? The number of organizations willing to report the number and cost of successful attacks is decreasing. Why is that? So I know you're getting attacked, but you're not willing to tell me what it cost or that actually you got attacked? Because you could look bad. What if all of a sudden we went on the news and said, whatever, Rose State College has fallen victim to whatever? I mean, there's that whole thing, any publicity is good publicity, but not necessarily. So I guess it goes to actors and stuff like that. And presidential candidates. That kind of stuff. Okay, it says whether attack is successful depends on the company's security efforts. Did you catch it? You know, how far did it get? Okay, here's some different examples. Okay. So espionage or trespassing, 4.07% in 2012. Okay. Forces of nature, 2003 was 10. So, you know, a lot of different stuff there. Okay, so vulnerability assessment. I hate what that clock is. You guys can see it and I can't see it. It needs to be somewhere else. Okay.
Didn't you just steal a clock from us?
Yeah, that was for the other office. That was for the wherever, the advisement area.
Oh, now you're on record.
Yeah.
Theoretically,
And steal it.
you could move it right.
Yeah, and you guys would never know what time to sell it. So we should mount it like right there. That'd be perfect.
Or move it to the wall underneath the
Okay.
light.
So, vulnerability assessment says a review leads to the correction of a list. So basically, we find vulnerabilities, and then we have to come up with controls against them. Okay? Here's some. Compromises to intellectual property, again, forces nature, human error. We talked about some of the different things there already. And that was on the router. Okay? Okay. Oh, hold on. The threat vulnerability assessment. I keep forgetting that acronym. Okay. So basically keep track of all this stuff. Prioritize it by which one's the worst, which one's the least. If it has zero weight, it could still be important. So here we could list all the different threats and which assets they've pertain to. Could one asset have more than one threat against it? Sure. So we have a tornado. Really, that should affect everything in this room. Right? Now, maybe if we had a virus, well, that would not affect probably my projector, because it's not going to affect the projector, but it could affect the computer. Okay. All right.
You write a virus just to like attack a projector.
Yeah, I don't think it was written one yet. You know, sooner or later, there can be viruses for everything, for mice, for projectors, for everything. Could you think of one that actually store something in the mouse that when you plug it in someone's computer? I just see it happening. Okay. So then you could also have, the vulnerabilities from one affects another, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now let's talk about the risk assessments. It's a process that assigns a comparative risk rating to each of them. Okay. So the estimated risk is not an exact science. So what is the chance of something happens? Well, you can always look at statistics at other organizations, stuff like that, how many viruses there are, how stupid your people are, that kind of stuff. So risk is the likelihood of the occurrence of a vulnerability multiplied by the value of the asset minus the current controls plus the uncertainty of the knowledge. So I drive a car. What controls are in place for my car? It's one of the main controls for risk. What do you think?
I mean, you're an electric car.
Okay, any car. Just say any car.
Depending on the age of the car, some of the cars have computer chips in them that can be hacked into.
Okay, but what is a control that pertains to all cars out there and all drivers actually? Insurance. Isn't it mandatory? That's one control we're mandated to have. I always had this one student, Steve, not our advisor, never had insurance. I'm like, dude, you tell me this all the time. So how do you register? He goes, I just get out to just one place and I get 1 month's worth of insurance. Man, I said, let me know when you're driving. I don't want to be near you. But really, a control for a car would be insurance. That's a mandated control. Okay? So the likelihood is the overall rating that the probability that a specific vulnerability will be exploited. What's the chances a computer get affected with a virus?
Pretty good.
Well, consider it's only used, a couple times a month, or a couple times a week in class, not really used by students. You would hope the likelihood would be less on this one than up in room 206 in the open computer lab. You agree with that? This would have a less likelihood to get affected? Okay. So, yeah. Alright, this is information from risk identification processes, weights and scores to determine which ones you should protect. Okay? Values must be assigned. What is the value? Again, we already talked about how this computer might be more valuable, but really the Elmo costs more money. We already talked about that. Okay? It says if a vulnerability is fully managed by an existing control, it can be set aside. So if I have something, like when I actually went on a trip, I got a rental car from Rose State. When I was on a trip for Rose State, I was told to buy every piece of insurance they offer. That was awesome. So would you like to? Yes, just put everything on there. The cost ends up being high. Does anyone know why they told me to do that?
Because it's more expensive to replace a rental car than it is to have insurance.
Right, and we are currently covered by, basically we're self-insured here at Rose State. We don't have insurance. We are self-insured, which basically says something happens at Rose State, the state will pay for it. They didn't want me crashing a car and then having to pay a $2 million or whatever fee. So what they did is they basically said just buy all insurance. So it was kind of handy, but right. So when they told me to buy all the insurance available, so was there any risk left in that car by me driving that rental car? I could have died. Yeah, that would be a slight, but really for the car itself, I would really say we got rid of the risk pretty much totally covered. Okay, that's why I always like those. Like I have an alarm system at home. I have it where no matter what goes wrong, they fix it for free. It's all included in my payment. Does anyone have that? Y'all have alarm systems at your house? Some of you?
We have a defunct one.
Well, I have one that actually works and is monitored. And whatever goes wrong, they just fix it for free. That's included in my fee. And when I got my roof replaced, I had them right on there on the contract. The kid is not responsible for anything above a penny. I told them I had to put a value in there, so I said I'll pay a penny. But they didn't like it because once they just they found out the insurance company was going to keep part of the money for a deductible. They're like, but I said, hey, right here in the contract, Cat Duty's not responsible for anything over a penny. It's all assigned, so they weren't too happy. But at that point, I didn't care about it anymore. So
did you pay him that penny?
no, they just did all the work and weren't happy. Okay. So if a vulnerability is partially controlled, how much is not controlled? Okay.
Everything else.
That would be like the deductible. Okay, I'm still have to pay the whatever deductible for my car insurance or my medical insurance or whatever. See, I have double health insurance, so I pay nothing. But a lot of people do pay deductibles. So uncertainty, a factor that accounts for uncertainty, must always be added to the equations. Are you totally sure? You're never totally sure. Okay. All right. Risk equals likelihood of vulnerability occurrence times value minus percentage, which we already mentioned all that. And the book has an example of that. Okay. Now, likelihood and consequences. There's this New Zealand risk standard. It says uses qualitative methods to determine risk based on a threat's probability of occurrence and expected results of an attack. So, do you think people are going to waste their time trying to break into it? In qualitative, it says consists of using categories instead of specific values. Okay. All right. Come on. All right. Here we go. Consequences evaluated on 5 levels. So it could be insignificant. Someone steals my pencil. No big deal. We're still going to be able to teach class. It's very insignificant. Yes, we could have some financial loss, but the cost of this pencil again is very low. Okay. Catastrophic. Someone steals the computer. Well, I can no longer lecture. Technically, I could. I just couldn't record it. So would it really be catastrophic? I would probably say major rather than catastrophic. Catastrophic might be the building's gone.
Pencil is a weapon.
Yes, someone stabbed me with a pencil. That would be catastrophic. So they do vary. And is there one totally right answer at all times? No. So it might change. Okay. Here we go. The qualitative. Now we have A through E. Is expected to occur in most circumstances. Okay. Will probably occur in most circumstances. So is this likely or could be rare? May occur only in exceptional circumstances. So, 2 different ways of looking at it. Okay? I can do any more on that. Okay, so for each threat and its associated vulnerabilities that have a risk, they should have a separate list of controls for that item. What controls do we have in place for the computer? So what controls do you think we have on this computer right here? Come on, there's at least 2.
The deep freeze.
Nope, not in here.
No.
Virus scanner's 1.
Firewall.
Login credentials.
Okay, I didn't think of those. Give me another one. How about warranty? I mean, usually we buy them, they come with a warranty.
I'm fairly certain the warranty's expired right now.
Well, at one point it had a warranty.
No, at one point it wasn't.
I'm saying we've had these computers for quite a while.
Yeah, and we really haven't updated them in a while because we have no money, which obviously we're not updating this year. So really look at what controls you have in place. Could we get more control? Could we spend? When I ran my business, I had warranties on all my servers. They were getting to the point where I could no longer renew them. So basically Dell let me renew them out to 5 years. No more than 5 years. Why can I not go beyond 5 years?
Technology's constantly changing.
Right, and they don't want to have to keep the parts available, and they know it's going to crash sooner or later, so that's when I sold my company, because I didn't want to replace my servers. Okay, so controls, safeguards, countermeasures, those are things we use to protect our items. Okay, access controls. We talked about this a little bit in the other chapter. Mandatory, non-discretionary, discretionary ways we protect. We have policies in place, we have programs, we have technology, we have a lot of stuff in place. We already talked about what an asset is. We talked about the impact of an asset and vulnerability. We already talked about all that stuff. Here's a chart where we could put it all together. Charts are nice. I showed you all the chart I was making for my solar production at home. Do anyone else make charts for stuff? You guys don't make charts for your stuff? I'd love it. I'm waiting till the day when I could somehow track the darn groceries in the house. And in the pantry and in the cabinets and all that stuff.
So there is technically
There's
like
actually
the buttons.
apps for that, by the way.
Yeah, I want something that was what was it, Friday night? No, it was Thursday night. No, Wednesday night last week. Wednesday I was going to stop and get some food on the way home. said, you know, we got leftovers in the fridge. I'm going to go home and eat some leftovers. I got home, opened the fridge. It was so many leftovers. I'm like, you know what? It's time to clean the fridge. Well, I found some avocados that were stuck way in the back. Been there quite a while. So, the point is, I want something to help manage that stuff. But I haven't found a way to do that yet. Okay. So, if anyone comes up with an idea, let me know. I know there are refrigerators that do some managing, but I want some. So, we need something that like keeps track of the milk. You have exactly 0.64 gallons. That kind of stuff. Okay. So, here's another example worksheet, and that's pretty much the end of the chapter. All right. Now, let me save this, and we're going to talk about your assignment.